Prabhupada ki jai. Lord Prahladananda, Swami Bhakti, Sim Rani Bhakti, all others, Guru Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnava Shri Guru Sadhanatam Sadhana Prahladananda Nikantam Savivam Sadhaitam Sadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinamata Gurgate Gopesha Gopiyakanda Radha Namaste Tata Kanchana Gaurani Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sudevi Manamani Haripriye Vancha Kalpatarujasha Kripa Sindhu Devasha Paritana Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama I'm going to read from the Nectar of Instruction, text number 5.
Okay.
6. Drishtai Svabhava Janitar Vapusasta Doshar.
Drishtai Svabhava Janitar Vapusasta Doshar.
Na Prakritvam Iha Bhakta Janasya Pashyat.
Na Prakritvam Iha Bhakta Janasya Pashyat.
Gangam Basam Nakalu Buddha Pena Pankar.
Gangam Basam Nakalu Buddha Pena Pankar.
Rama Dravatvam Abhikachati Niradharmai.
Rama Dravatvam Abhikachati Niradharmai.
Drishtai Svabhava Janitar Vapushashta Doshar.
Drishtai Svabhava Janitar Vapushashta Doshar.
Na Prakritvam Iha Bhakta Janasya Pashyat.
Na Prakritvam Iha Bhakta Janasya Pashyat.
Gangam Basam Nakulu Kalu Buddha Pena Pankar.
Gangam Basam Nakalu Buddha Pena Pankar.
Rama Dravatvam Abhigachati Niradharmai.
Rama Dravatvam Abhigachati Niradharmai.
Drishtai Svabhava Janitar Vapushascha Doshar.
Drishtai Svabhava Janitar Vapushascha Doshar.
Prakritatvam Iha Bhakta Janasya Pashyat.
Na Prakritatvam Iha Bhakta Janasya Pashyat.
Pena Panke
Gangam Vasamna Kalubud Buddha Pena Pankai
Ramadravat Vamapagachati Niradharmai
Ramadravat Vamapagachati Niradharmai.
Ladies.
Drishtai svabhava janitai vapushascha doshai.
Drishtai Svabhava Janitai Vapushascha Doshai.
Na prakritatvam bhakta janasya pashet.
Na Prakritatvam Iha Bhakta Janasya Pashet.
Gangam vasamna kalubud budapena pankai.
Gangam Vasamna Kalubud Buddha Pena Pankai
Ramadhavatvam apagachati niradharmai.
Brahmadravatvam Apagachati Niradharmai.
Drishtai svabhava janitai vapushascha doshai.
Drishtai Svabhava Janitai Vapushascha Doshai.
Na prakritatvam iha bhakta janasya pashet.
Na Prakritatvam Iha Bhakta Janasya Pashet.
Gangam vasamna kalubud budapena pankai.
Gangam Vasamna Kalubud Buddha Pena Pankai
Brahmadhavatvam apagachati niradharmai.
Brahmadravatvam Apagachati Niradharmai. Drishtai Svabhava Janitai Vapushascha Doshai. Na Prakritatvam Iha Bhakta Janasya Pashet. Gangam Vasamna Kalubud Buddha Pena Pankai Brahmadravatvam Apagachati Niradharmai.
Drishtai. Seen by ordinary vision. Swabhava Janita. Born of one's own nature. Vapusha. Of the body. Cha. And. Doshai. By the faults. Na. Not. Prakritatvam. The state of being material. Iha. In this world. Bhakta Janasya. Of a pure devotee. Pashet. One should see. Ganga. Ambasa. Of the Ganges water. Not. Kalu. Certainly. Buddha Pena Pangar. By bubbles, foam, and mud. Brahma Dravatvam. The transcendental nature. Apagachi is spoiled. Niradharmai. Characteristics of water. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki. Being situated in his original Krishna conscious position, a pure devotee does not identify with the body. Such a devotee should not be seen from a materialistic point of view. Indeed, one should overlook a devotee's having a body, born in a low family, a body with a bad complexion, a deformed body, or a diseased or infirm body. According to ordinary vision, such imperfections may seem prominent in the body of a pure devotee, but despite such seeming defects, the body of a pure devotee cannot be polluted. It is exactly like the waters of the Ganges, which sometimes during the rainy season are full of bubbles, foam, and mud. The Ganges waters do not become polluted. Those who are advanced in spiritual understanding will bathe in the Ganges without considering the condition of the water. Please repeat. Being situated in his original Krishna conscious position. A pure devotee does not identify with the body. Such a devotee should not be seen from a materialistic point of view. Indeed, one should overlook a devotee's having a body born in a low family, a body with a bad complexion, a deformed body, or a diseased or infirm body. According to ordinary vision, such imperfections may seem prominent in the body of a pure devotee. But despite such seeming defects, the body of a pure devotee cannot be polluted. It is exactly like the waters of the Ganges. But sometimes during the rainy season are full of bubbles, foam, and mud. The Ganges waters do not become polluted. Those who are advanced in spiritual understanding will bathe in the Ganges without considering the condition of the water. Prabhupada's purport. Shuddha Bhakti, the activity of the soul proper. In other words, engagement in the transcendental loving service of the Lord is performed in a liberated condition. In Bhagavad Gita 14:26 it is stated, Mam chayo vyabhicharena bhakti yogena sevate sagunan samatityayitan brahma bhuyaya kalpate. One who engages in full devotional service, who does not fall down in any circumstance, at once transcends the modes of material nature, and thus comes to the level of Brahman. Avyabhicharini bhakti means unalloyed devotion. Person engaged in devotional service must be free from material motives. In this Krishna consciousness movement, one's consciousness must be changed. If consciousness is aimed towards material enjoyment, it is material consciousness. And if it's aimed towards serving Krishna, it is Krishna consciousness. A surrendered soul serves Krishna without material considerations. Agnyabhilasita shunyam. That's from the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Jnana karma didavita. Unalloyed devotional service, which is transcendental to the activities of the body and mind, such as jnana, mental speculation, and karma, fruit of active work, is called pure bhakti yoga. Bhakti yoga is the proper activity of the soul, and when one is actually engages in unalloyed, uncontaminated devotional service, he is already liberated. Sagunan Samati Dayatan. Krishna's devotee is not subjected to material conditions, even though the bodily features may be a pure materially condition. One should therefore not see a pure devotee from a materialistic point of view. And that's when it's actually a devotee. He cannot see another devotee perfectly. As explained in the previous verse, there are three types of devotees: Kanista Adhikari, Madhyama Adhikari, and Uttima Adhikari. The Kanista Adhikari cannot distinguish between a devotee and a non-devotee. He is simply concerned with worshiping the deity in the temple. A Madhyama Adhikari, however, can distinguish between the devotee and the non-devotee, as well as between the devotee and the Lord. Thus he treats the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the devotee and the non-devotee, in different ways. No one should criticize the bodily defects of a pure devotee. If there are such defects, they should be overlooked. What should be taken into account is the spiritual master's main business, which is devotional service, pure service to the Supreme Lord, as stated in the Bhagavad Gita, 9:30. Apichet sudaracharo bhajante mamananyava sadoreva samantavya samyavyastito hisaha. Even if a devotee sometimes seems to be engaged in abominable activities, he should be considered a sadhu, a saintly person, because his actual identity is that of one engaged in the loving service of the Lord. In other words, he is not to be considered an ordinary human being. Even though a pure devotee may not be born in a Brahmin or a Goswami family, if he is engaged in the service of the Lord, he should not be neglected. In actuality, there cannot be a family of Goswamis based on material considerations, caste or heredity. The Goswami title is actually the monopoly of the pure devotees. Thus, we speak of the 6 Goswamis, headed by Rupa Goswami and Sanatana Goswami. Rupa Goswami and Sanatana Goswami had practically become Mohammedans and had therefore changed their names to Davira Kasa and Sakara Malika. But Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself made them Goswami. Therefore the Goswami title is not hereditary. The word Goswami refers to one who can control his senses, who is master of the senses. A devotee is not controlled by the senses, but is the controller of the senses. Consequently, he should be called Swami or Goswami, even though he may not be born in a Goswami family. According to this formula, the Goswamis, who are descendants of Sri Nityananda Prabhu and Sri Advaita Prabhu, are certainly devotees. The devotees coming from other families should not be discriminated against. Indeed, whether the devotee comes from a family of previous acharyas or from an ordinary family, they should be treated equally. One should not think, oh, here is an American Goswami, and discriminate against him. Nor one should think, here is a Nityananda Vamsa Goswami. There is an undercurrent of protest against our awarding the title Goswami to the American Vaishnavas of the Krishna consciousness movement, and German Vaishnavas too. Sometimes people flatly tell the American devotees, and other devotees too, that their sannyas or title of Goswami is not bona fide. However, according to the statements of Srila Rupa Goswami in this verse, an American Goswami and a Goswami born in a family of acharyas are non-different. On the other hand, a devotee who has obtained the title of Goswami but is not born of a Brahmin father or a Goswami in the family of Nityananda or Advaita Prabhu should not be artificially puffed up by thinking that he has become a Goswami. He should always remember that as soon as he becomes materially puffed up, he immediately falls down. This Krishna consciousness movement is a transcendental science. There is no room for jealousy. This movement is meant for the Paramahamsas, who are completely free from all jealousy. Parma nirmatsaranam. Paramam nirmatsaranam. One should not be jealous, whether he is born in the family of Goswamis or he has the title of Goswami awarded to him. As soon as anyone becomes envious, he falls down from the platform of Paramahamsa. If we consider the bodily defects of a Vaishnava, we should understand that we are committing an offense at the lotus feet of the Vaishnava. An offense at the lotus feet of a Vaishnava is very serious. Indeed, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has described this offense as Hatimata, the mad elephant offense. A mad elephant can create a disaster, especially when it enters into a nicely trimmed garden. One should therefore be very careful not to commit any offense against a Vaishnava. Every devotee should be ready to take instructions from a superior Vaishnava, and a superior Vaishnava must be ready to help an inferior Vaishnava in all respects. One is superior or inferior according to his spiritual development in Krishna consciousness. One is forbidden to observe the activities of a pure Vaishnava from a material point of view. For the neophyte especially, considering a pure devotee from a material point of view is very injurious. One should therefore avoid observing a pure devotee externally, but should try to see the internal features and understand how he is engaged in the transcendent loving service of the Lord. In this way, one can avoid seeing the pure devotee from a material point of view, and thus one can gradually become a pure devotee himself. It's a very, the purport goes on, maybe we'll come over to some of the other points. Yeah, actually it's not that much.
Two more paragraphs.
Those who think that Krishna consciousness is limited to a certain section of people, certain section of devotees, or a certain tract of land, are generally prone to see the external features of the devotee. Such neophytes, unable to appreciate the exalted service of the advanced devotee, try to bring the Mahabhagavad to their platform. We experience such difficulty in propagating this Krishna consciousness all over the world. Unfortunately, we are surrounded by neophyte godbrothers who do not appreciate the extraordinary activities of spreading Krishna consciousness all over the world. They simply try to bring us to their platform and try to criticize us in every respect. We very much regret their naive activities and poor fund of knowledge. An empowered person who is actually engaged in the confidential service of the Lord should not be treated as an ordinary human being. For it is stated that unless one is empowered by Krishna, he cannot spread the Krishna consciousness movement all over the world. When one thus criticizes the pure devotee, he commits an offense, Vaishnava aparad, that is very obstructive and dangerous for those who desire to advance the Krishna consciousness. A person cannot derive any spiritual benefit when he offends the lotus feet of a Vaishnava. Everyone should therefore be very careful not to be jealous of an empowered Vaishnava or a Shuddha Vaishnava. It is also an offense to consider an empowered Vaishnava an object of disciplinary action. It is offensive to try to give him advice or to correct him. One can distinguish between a neophyte Vaishnava and an advanced Vaishnava by their activities. The advanced Vaishnava is always situated as the spiritual master and the neophyte is always considered his disciple. The spiritual master must not be subjected to the advice of a disciple, nor should the spiritual master be obliged to take instructions from those who are not his disciples. This is the sum and substance of Srila Rupa Goswami's advice in the 6th verse. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Vijay Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Srimati Nastya Deshatarne. So the verse again, which is as long as sometimes some purport. Trishtai Swabhava Janikar Vapushasta Doshar Na Prakritatvam Iha Bhakta Janasya Pashat Gangam Basam Naku Kalu Buddha Buddha Pena Pankar Brahma Dravatvam Abhagachit Apagachiti Iradharmai. Being situated in his original Krishna consciousness position, a pure devotee does not identify with the body. Such a devotee should not be seen from a materialistic point of view. Indeed, one should overlook a devotee's having a body in a low family, a body with a bad complexion, a deformed body, or a diseased or infirm body. According to ordinary vision, such imperfections may seem prominent in the body of a pure devotee, but despite such seeming defects, the body of a pure devotee cannot be polluted. It is exactly like the waters of the Ganges, which sometimes during the rainy season are full of bubbles, foam, and mud. The Ganges waters do not become polluted. Those who are advanced in spiritual understanding will bathe in the Ganges without considering the condition of the water. I read this purport many times, and there's always, as usual in Srila Prabhupada's purports, there's always something new to understand. Actually, all these literatures, they're all love stories. There's no books that are more romantic than the books from the Hare Krishna movement. Because it's actually dealing with true love. That everyone's thinking about true love, but actually in our Krishna consciousness movement, we have the formula for true love. It may not be what most people think is true love, but this is actually true love. And these are manuals how to develop true love. But it takes a lot of intelligence. People sometimes... Spiritual intelligence is not like material intelligence. Material intelligence is not how to develop love, it's how to exploit others in the name of love. And spiritual intelligence is how to love people, how to actually love people by directing people towards the right object of love, namely Krishna. And when one is actually in love with Krishna, then one can see everyone and everything in relation to Krishna and feel love towards everyone and everything. But here, Prabhupada is talking about two things, obviously. One is about Vaishnavas in general. Pure devotees in general. Just like mangoes. If we talk about mangoes, we don't talk about whether it's a ripe mango or an unripe mango. Just mangoes. Mangoes are like this, mangoes are like they're yellow or whatever. But there's a difference between a ripe mango and unripe mango. That a ripe mango just tastes sweeter. Although the unripe mango also has its uses, but it doesn't taste as sweet, that's all. But we can't say it's unripe, therefore it's an apple. And finally it's become ripe, so it's become a mango. So in the same way, those who are aspiring to become Vaishnavas, they're actually Vaishnavas as much as they're actually engaged in unalloyed, pure devotional service. The neophyte devotee, he's on a certain platform. And the intermediate of consciousness, the intermediate devotee is also on a certain level of consciousness, and the advanced devotee is on a certain type of consciousness. In the previous verse, and also in this verse, it just points out some of the characteristics of the different types of consciousness. But the platform that we have to be on, we can't be jealous, envious of other devotees especially. And it doesn't really matter which devotee we're envious of, it's not very auspicious. But the worst thing, Prabhupada points out, is to be envious of the Shuddha Vaishnava. If we're accustomed to be envious of the lower Vaishnavas, then that's not good. That's also Vaishnava aparad. And if we're accustomed to be envious of the intermediate Vaishnavas, that's very bad. And if we're accustomed to being envious of the Shuddha Vaishnava, then we're not Vaishnavas. We're Kali Chelas. Therefore, Prabhupada is accepting here all of us into the fold of Vaishnavas. But that doesn't mean because we're accepted as Vaishnavas that automatically we should consider ourselves Shuddha Vaishnavas. That would be very injurious to our own advancement. And indeed, the very advanced Vaishnava, he doesn't think himself to be a Vaishnava. So if we don't think ourselves to be Vaishnavas, we think ourselves to be aspiring Vaishnavas, well, that's very good. But we should see others as Vaishnavas and try to respect them accordingly. So in the previous verse it is said, Krishneti yasya giritam manasadriyeta. One should mentally honor the devotees who chant the holy name of the Lord. So this is a very broad category of devotees. And it takes a lot of discrimination to understand this. Neophyte devotees, what platform can we say they're generally, which platforms are they generally on most while they're performing devotional service? And what to speak of when they're not performing devotional service? Which platforms do they have a tendency to gravitate towards and they're trying to get away from? Does anyone know? No one knows.
Trying to go to
Oh yeah, well these are, we have three platforms. The spiritual platform, the intellectual platform, we have the mental platform, and the physical platform. So which platform is the neophyte devotees tend to gravitate to? Which are they struggling against to get to another platform? What's that? Mental platform. Anyone here ever get onto the mental platform? Few devotees here. And when we're not on the mental platform, which platform are we on? The bodily platform. But of course, devotees, as Prabhupada says here, they don't identify themselves. We said, we try to some degree, or to a large degree, we don't identify ourselves with the body and the mind. Although we become, we could say, captivated by the body and the mind. And sometimes we may identify ourselves with the body and mind under different circumstances. But we're trying to get away from the bodily and mental platform. Therefore, the first thing that Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami mentions to us, Sri Rupa Goswami mentions to us, Drishtaya Svabhava Janitara Viprashyadoshar. He says here we're on the bodily platform, and on the previous verse it's Krishneti Yasi Giritam Manasadriyeta. one should respect within the mind those who are chanting Hare Krishna. So it's this criticism which is very detrimental for our spiritual advancement. Our sense of discriminating without proper spiritual understanding. Krishna, so we have to learn respect. It is not that we don't criticize. Even Krishna criticizes. And he's quite heavy. As a matter of fact, when we repeat Krishna's words, then people think that we're criticizing them. And they become very disturbed. They become very disturbed when they hear about Krishna. They think, oh, Krishna, he's a very violent person. He killed animals in his childhood. He even killed a bull. Even his girlfriend wouldn't even get near him after he killed the bull. And then after killing innocent creatures like a duck one time, some snake came by and he killed that too. Well, women, that's, yes, he also killed his own nurse. He killed, even, a little calf came by and threw it into a tree. And they say they're vegetarians. I mean, Krishna's childhood is just full of stories that people may take in the wrong way. And then he grew up. And it was much worse. There you have depictions. Where the devotees were ecstatic and they're watching Krishna just kill elephants and horses and cutting off people's heads and their arms and rivers of blood flowing and their hair is just like seaweed and the elephants are like islands in the ocean of blood and the devotees are becoming more and more enlivened. Who are these people? And that's their hero. And they talk about love. Love for what? Some people misunderstand. They misunderstand Krishna, and they misunderstand what it means to criticize. Krishna is not criticizing anyone. Nor did Krishna never killed anyone. There was, I forget what the exact story is. One time Krishna was saying that, who was saying that Krishna is the best brahmachari? I think it was some, Durvasa Muni said that Krishna is the best brahmachari. And I think all the gopis were laughing. And Bhishmadev also pointed out the same thing, that Krishna is the best brahmachari. He's surrounded by all these ladies, and yet he has absolutely no material consciousness. It's completely spiritual. Bhishmadev said, if I was surrounded by the gopis, who are the most beautiful ladies in the whole universe, and beyond the universe, even in Vaikuntha, the ladies there can't compare to the gopis. He said, I become affected, but Krishna is completely unaffected. But Krishna says, what is that verse? Swavit prahosta karar samstuta purusha pashu yat karna patiyo peda jatinama gadagrija. Men like hogs, dogs, camels, and asses. Wow, what criticism. Everyone's an animal. Dogs, hogs, camels, asses. They glorify the bigger dogs, the bigger hogs, the bigger camels, the bigger asses. But they never glorify Krishna, who carries a club to hit people over the head. Don't glorify him. So people think we're criticizing them, but they're wrong, because they don't know who they are. It's the soul who they actually are. We're not criticizing them. Krishna is not criticizing them. He's criticizing their illusion that's keeping them from understanding who they actually are. And that illusory energy is actually Krishna's. So he can glorify it. He can criticize his own energy, because his own energy he actually loves. He loves all his energy. So out of love he can criticize materialistic activities, because he's wanting the soul to wake up. Well, when it's fortunate enough to come to the platform of hearing from a Shuddha Vaishnava, such as Srila Prabhupada, who's given us his direct personal association, and also his association through his Vani, then we have to be very careful in how we perceive Srila Prabhupada and how we take his instructions. So our Krishna consciousness movement will advance as our vision of Srila Prabhupada becomes enhanced, and as our appreciation for his instructions become enhanced. It is exactly the same thing as if we water the root of the tree, then naturally the water will go to all the leaves and branches. So since our movement is a movement of love, we can learn to love each other. And that means every category of devotee who's participating in the Hare Krishna movement, and even those who are not participating in the Hare Krishna movement, even those who are simply chanting the holy name, we can learn how to appreciate them appropriately and how to relate to them appropriately, so that our love for them will develop, and our helping them become Krishna conscious will also develop. But this will take some transcendental discrimination. To recognize our position as devotees, aspiring devotees, or others as more advanced devotees than we are, and ultimately the Shuddha Vaishnavas, such as Srila Prabhupada, who the empowered Vaishnava, Krishna Shakti Vinanaya Tarpavartana, who is able to spread Krishna consciousness all over the world. So through that vision that Srila Prabhupada is giving us, we can learn how to see others in a spirit of appreciation. And by that spirit of appreciation, what are we appreciating? Even the fact that they're simply chanting Hare Krishna. Then we should immediately think, I must respect them in the mind because they're chanting Hare Krishna. But that does not mean our discrimination ends. And because they're chanting Hare Krishna, now let me surrender to them. Or for instance, they were born in Vrindavan. They're Brijavasis. They must be pure devotees. So they're out in the Ganges smoking Ganga. Ganja. So it must be offered to Krishna. When I went to Vrindavan the first time, 1970, what year was it? It must have been 72. It was 1972. And I was in Vrindavan, and the devotees told me that you can go to the sweet shops and you can buy anything there because everything here is offered to Krishna in Vrindavan. So this is one of the rumors that got around, and Prabhupada heard about that rumor, and it became so prevalent that even Prabhupada mentions it in the Nectar of Instruction. He said not that everything that in Vrindavan is not offered to Krishna. One has to have a sense of real discrimination rather than just sentiment. But at the same time, that sense of discrimination shouldn't overwhelm our sense of appreciation if someone is chanting Hare Krishna. As a matter of fact, we have to develop the vision that everyone is potentially a servant of Krishna. And everyone I should try to help become Krishna conscious, if I can, if it's within my realm of possibility. So we have our realm of influence and we have our realm of concern. So we have concern for everyone to help them become Krishna conscious, and we should know what our level of influence is, so that, as Prabhupada writes, there's a big fire, the Shuddha Bhakta. He's a big fire. Whatever you put into the big fire, it's going to be consumed. But if there's a smaller fire and you put something into it, it may be consumed, it may not be consumed. We have to judge accordingly. When we're cooking, we adjust the flame in order to cook something. We have that discrimination. We don't put a little tiny flame when we're cooking something really big. And a big, big flame when we're cooking something very small. So that sense of discrimination we have to develop. What is my spiritual potency? And how to apply it appropriately under different circumstances to help others become Krishna conscious. But at least the background, the basic principle is appreciation. If you see a little spark and appreciate it. If we don't appreciate it, then there's something wrong. If we criticize the little spark, we just criticize completely. Oh, they're sahajiyas. Don't get near them, they're contaminated. That's true, but we should appreciate at the same time that they're spiritual souls. It's not enviousness that we don't want to associate with them. It's not out of competition or whatever else. It's simply to protect our own spiritual life and to appropriately push on the movement of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But at the same time, we should understand that they're spiritual souls, and they're also chanting Hare Krishna. So some appreciation should be there. And then above them, of course, there's so many different subtleties. There's also the devotees who are chanting Hare Krishna, who come to the Hare Krishna movement. They're also afflicted with the same desires that the Sahaji is afflicted by, especially illicit sex and intoxication. But they have the good sense to not utilize their senses in these activities. There may be attachment, but they've recognized to some degree or another, by good association, these are sources of misery. And therefore, although they're also chanting Hare Krishna, they're controlling their senses and mind more than the Sahajiyas are. So we also respect them within our mind, but we don't avoid associating with them. They become the objects of our mercy if we're more advanced than them. As we heard the other day, the difference between Kripa and Daya. That was your class, wasn't it? Or that was Kandavakanama. Yeah, Kripa and Daya. So if one is controlling their senses, following the principles of regular principles of devotional service, chanting Hare Krishna, we not only respect them within our mind, but they become the objects of our mercy to try to help them if they want to be helped by us. And for those who are actually serious, who have actually spread the Hare Krishna movement, to spread it, cooperate, or even to worship the deity in the temple. Because that's also, it is not that the Hare Krishna movement is only moving outside the temple. It's also moving inside the temple. It could be moving inside our house. It's a movement, but it has to move. It has to go somewhere, and hopefully it's going forward rather than backwards. Jagannath is someone going forward. Jagannath is going forward, and we should go forward with him. So for those who are going forward, worshiping the deities in their house, worshiping the deities in the temple, worshiping the deity on the outside, especially spreading the Hare Krishna movement by chanting Hare Krishna in public, distributing transcendental literature, finding innocent people, and trying to help them become Krishna conscious. How do you know when someone is innocent? Well, one good sign is that they put their hands on a book. And then they give a donation. So, somehow or another, they're innocent. They haven't made their goal of life to stop the Hare Krishna movement. Like people, you go out sometimes, distribute books, and people have made it their mission to make sure the Hare Krishna movement doesn't distribute any books or doesn't chant Hare Krishna on the streets. As I mentioned before, that in Belgium, when they declared us to be a dangerous cult, they gave two reasons. One is that we have the audacity to commit the offense of chanting the holy names of God publicly. Could you imagine that? How sinful.
Maharaj, can you explain what is audacity?
Audacity? It means audacity. The nerve. The arrogance. To actually go out in the street and chant God's names. And, God. A lesser offense, but quite grave for Belgium, which was the center of cow slaughter, is that we're actually vegetarians. God forbid our children associate with them and stop eating meat. So these people, whoever came up with this idea, obviously cannot appreciate the Hare Krishna movement, even the most basic things about it. So therefore we avoid associating with them. But we cooperate with each other. In this deity worship requires chanting Hare Krishna, requires cooperation to prepare the food and so many different things. Whether one's home, the husband or wife probably say they sit down morning, evening, chant Hare Krishna, they worship the deities, they hear about Krishna. This requires husband and wife to cooperate, and children, hopefully too, in Krishna consciousness. And for the temple, how much cooperation it requires, if there is a temple. That's one of the signs how difficult it is to cooperate. And then how much more cooperation is required to go out in the street and try to make people who have no interest, seemingly no interest at all, to become Krishna conscious. To help them in some way. It requires tremendous amount of cooperation. So if we don't begin in our home, then how will we be able to cooperate in the temple? And if we can't cooperate in the temple, how can we cooperate in the whole society to try to help the whole society become Krishna conscious? Chaitanya Mahaprabhu showed that example by first having the nocturnal kirtans in Srivasanga. And then when he felt that it was time, he broke out and went public. We've already gone public. We are public. We're less public than before. And in some places they wonder, they come up and they ask, who are you? Are you you're a monk, right? Right. Oh, I thought so. I thought you were a Buddhist monk. No, we're the Hare Krishna movement. The Hare, yeah, we're the hairless Krishna movement. The Hare Krishna movement. Hare, what's that? Krishna. Oh, you're a Christian. Oh, that's good. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna movement. So we moved. So we have to keep on moving. We already have experience. It's not that anything was actually lost. We have so much experience of how to deal with the public. But we also have to deal with ourselves. When Srila Prabhupada is here, and he hasn't left, he's still here. When Prabhupada was here, for those who were here also, who noticed Prabhupada's presence, because Prabhupada is moving amongst us. But they were also special persons, because just as Krishna was moving amongst us, and now he's not seemingly moving amongst us. But we don't say, oh, Krishna left and he's no longer here. We say, no, here Krishna is in the temple. We don't bring people to the temple and show people the deity and say, here's the deity, here's the form of Krishna, and Krishna left us 5,000 years ago, and he left us some dolls to play with. And they look like him, so we get some satisfaction playing with dolls that look like him. We don't say that. We say, here's the deity. We worship the deity because the deity is Krishna. We even say that there's no difference between Krishna and his name. It's spiritual. So why should we say there's any difference between Srila Prabhupada and his Murti form? Did Prabhupada ever say that? No, he said, I'm in my Murti form. Just like Krishna is in his deity form, Krishna is in his picture form, the acharyas are in their picture form, so Prabhupada is also present in the form of his deity. He's also present in the form of his words. He lives forever by his divine instructions, and his followers live with him. He reasons ill who thinks that Vaishnavas die, for Vaishnavas still live in sound. That Vaishnavas die to live, and living spread the holy name around. And Prabhupada also lives as his devotees, his followers. Because what we're seeing is not the souls, unless you have spiritual vision. What we're seeing when devotees are performing devotional service in our movement, we're seeing Prabhupada being manifested, his instructions being manifested in the form of devotees performing service. So actually what we're seeing is the parampara coming through. Maybe it's not a flood of pure love coming through, but it's love coming through. And unless we recognize that, how will we be able to see when the whole flood comes through? Of course, if the whole flood comes through, it might be easier to recognize. But we should understand this like a little bit of gold. We value it. If we throw a whole bunch of little gold coins out, everyone says, oh, it's just a little coin, who cares? Just leave it there. Because we're Brahmins, so we might leave it there. But generally speaking, if people threw gold coins, little gold coins out, everyone would value them because we know the value of gold, the whole gold mine. So even a little love that's coming through from Krishna, through the pure artists of succession, we value that. And when that little flow of love comes through and sparks other flows of love to come through, we value that too. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes are not just about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And it's not only about his pure devotees. It's not only about the Panchatattva. It's not only about the 6 Goswamis. It's about the mercy that they distributed everywhere. When Chaitanya Mahaprabhu chanted Hare Krishna in his tour of South India, those who heard him chant Hare Krishna, they became ecstatic in love of God, and they went to their villages, and they chanted Hare Krishna, and those who heard them chant, they also became enlivened with love of God. That's the mission of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, because they became instruments for the divine energy, which flowed through them. The divine instructions, the divine energy we become instruments for those divine activities that help us manifest the divine energy and the divine instructions. We become instruments to spread the holy name within ourselves, within our families, within our community, within the society. Then these external things were, as Prabhupada says, whether we're from America, or from Serbia, or from Bosnia, or from Slovenia, or we're from any place in this universe, whether we're man or women, or whether we're any living entity who's participating in the Hare Krishna movement, then the result is that we can learn how to respect them. And when that respect is developed by proper instructions, by proper activities, then gradually develops into love, loving feelings. The basic principle is respect, and that basic principle of respect will burn away, will eliminate, gradually eliminate, if it's done in relationship to devotional service, in Krishna consciousness, will gradually help us develop pure devotional service in Krishna consciousness. If we see the sparks and we fan them, we see the sparks within ourselves and we fan that sparks, we see the spark within others and try and help fan them, then the result is that they will be fanned by the mercy of the holy name. They will be fanned by the mercy of the instructions coming from the disciple succession through Prabhupada's instructions, and those who give Prabhupada's instructions from Prabhupada's example, and for those who follow their Prabhupada's instructions to the extent that we're able to do it, and then gradually we'll get to the goal. So that's my point. Well, there's many points. It's not just my point. The most important thing that I see, that we all have great responsibility. It is not that a few devotees are going to spread the Hare Krishna movement, a few devotees, and the rest of us were just recipients of mercy. Mercy, Prabhu, give me mercy. Yes, we should be in that mood, we want mercy, but we should also be in the mood, we want to give out the mercy. Not keep it for ourselves. Mercy, more mercy, please, for me. Shower. What about other people? Oh, they need mercy too, I know, but me. More for me. Oh, he got some mercy. No, we have to become willing to give out the mercy. At least to our family members. At least to our friends. Then when we become giving it out, then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu will give us more and more mercy to give out. And then we'll understand how to actually get mercy. It's not just by receiving it, but by giving it also. And then we'll get more and more from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Final comment. As I mentioned this before, which I think is significant. At the final days of Srila Prabhupada's with us, being with us, physically present, then he was in a room, and he was in the room in Vrindavan, and some Indian gentlemen came by because they wanted to find out who the next leader of the movement would be. Generally, in the present Indian understanding, or Indian mutts, temples, generally when the acharya leaves, he appoints another acharya to carry on. Because it's supposed to be vyavasayatmika buddhi, one instruction, otherwise everyone gets confused. Just like if a child was saying, "Mother, give me something to drink." And then he says, "Mother, no, give me something to eat. I want to go to sleep. I want to watch television. I want to go out and play with my friends. The mother did, what does he want? My God. Say one thing. So similarly, we hear too many instructions, we think, my God, they're all disagreeing. The super soul is schizophrenic. He doesn't know what to do. All his representatives are just saying all kinds of things from him. So generally there's one acharya who says, jump, and everyone just asks, how high? So that makes life easier for everyone. It may not develop anyone's intelligence, but it makes life easier. So Prabhupada didn't have a movement just to make things easy for us. He made a movement to challenge us. And therefore, he said, when they asked him who the next acharya will be. So Prabhupada said, I haven't named any acharya. He said, all my followers, they'll all be the next leader. As much as they follow, to that extent they become the leader. He said, you can also become a leader. He was pointing out to the Indian gentlemen who were there. If you follow these instructions, then you'll also become the next leader. That doesn't mean that there are no leaders in the society. Prabhupada, he made so many leaders, official leaders, managerial leaders, he made spiritual leaders. They're all leaders, but these are positions, just like we made, Prabhupada made so many Brahmins, he made so many sannyasis, he even gave services as initiating guru within society. But these are services, and they also have their responsibilities. And those who are under them, who are either disciples or part of a zone or a temple, they have an obligation. It's not that, oh, you're just officially a leader, you're my guru because you gave me a name and some beads, but I think that you're not an uttama adhikar in my estimation. Therefore, I very carefully figure out which instructions to follow or not, because who knows where you're going to be in the next 5 years. I have to be really careful about dealing with you, because if you're trying to lord it over me, I think. You have material motivations. You don't understand my heart, Prabhu. If you understood my heart, you give me instruction that would enliven me. But you're telling me something I don't want to do, and I'm not going to do it. And you're causing me to offend you. Therefore, you couldn't be bona fide. Therefore, I can do whatever I want. Because if you were bona fide, I'd be enlivened. You tell me exactly what I want to do. And then I'd be agreeable to do it. And then I'd honor you, respect you for being enlightened. No, there are certain services that we have. They're given by Krishna. Krishna has pointed us. Not that a mother said, the child says to the mother, oh, you're just my official mother. If just by some circumstances you became my mother, why should I listen to you? I don't think you're a realized mother. And the father, who are you anyhow? Who knows who my real father is? My real father is Krishna. I don't listen to you. No, every position has its obligations for the person who has that service, and everyone who becomes a disciple or a son or a whatever subordinate, they also have their obligations because they're representatives of Krishna. Even Sanatana Goswami, he followed the Nawab. No one is going to say the Nawab was a pure devotee. Therefore, Sanatana Goswami followed his instructions. But because he was a king, he was understood by Sanatana Goswami to be a representative of Krishna in that way. So what to speak of in a transcendental movement where devotees are at, where the society is actually a spiritual society, and everyone working in this society, their positions are actually spiritual. The initiating spiritual master, his position is spiritual. The GBC is actually supposed to be, his position, his service is spiritual. We all have the temple president, the cook. Do we think that the cook, his service is material? The one who's cleaning the pots, his service is material? It's all spiritual. But as much as we do it purely to please Krishna, whether we're washing the pots, or giving initiation, or running a temple, or going on a book distribution, or cooking for Krishna, as much as we're doing it purely to serve Krishna, under the guidance of the representatives of Krishna coming into civil succession, to that extent Krishna appears within our heart. Krishna's form, name, quality, pastimes, the spiritual energy. Krishna appears with his associates. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his associates appear within our heart. The 6 Goswamis appear within our heart. The disciple succession appears within our heart. The whole spiritual world appears within our heart. And this is the potency, this is the force that will be the force that will spread the Hare Krishna movement. That's the Krishna Shakti Vinanaya Tara Pavartana. And it's there in all of us. We simply have to fan it by understanding things properly. So thank you very much. Any questions? Yes. Yes.
Rekao je da materijalna inteligencija služi za to da bismo iskoristili druge.
You said that material intelligence is meant so that we can use others.
A duhovna inteligencija služi za to da bismo zaista volili ljude i da bismo ih usmjerili prema objektu.
Or exploit others, and that spiritual intelligence is meant so that we can actually love others and help them.
Koja je razlika između prenošenja duhovnog znanja i prenošenja materialističkog znanja?
What is the difference between transmitting spiritual knowledge and material knowledge?
Prenošenje duhovnog znanja povezano se izvjesnom vrstom misterije.
Transmitting of spiritual knowledge is linked to a certain type of mystery.
Well, let's not get too complicated. I think let's just leave it at the... Yeah, because we have to end the class also. So the spiritual knowledge is knowledge which will help us become Krishna conscious. And material knowledge is knowledge which will put obstacles or will take us away from Krishna. Generally speaking, people are selfish. Selfish means they want to be happy, and the object of happiness that will help them become happy is usually gratifying their own senses through this material body. So that's usually within karma, or vikarma. And expanding that jnana is how to help others have sense gratification. And when we come into the realm of karma yoga, jnana yoga, then this activity is meant to help to perform activities which will help us become Krishna conscious, and the knowledge of helping others become Krishna conscious. When we come to the stage of bhakti yoga, then we're utilizing everything in Krishna's service. Simply out of love, we're utilizing everything just to please Krishna. We're utilizing the knowledge, we're utilizing our activities simply to please Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Nectar of instruction ki jai.